It's time for Agriculture, presented by Turkana Farms in Germantown, New York, a small-scale producer of heritage breed livestock and a wide array of vegetables and berries on just over 39 acres. They also produce a full array of garden vegetables, many of them heirloom varieties raised naturally, as well as an assortment of berries, including raspberries, blackberries, gooseberries, black, red, and white currants, mulberries, and elderberries. And now, here's Mark Scherzer.
As part of my fall leek seeding project, I've tried to clear some trenches that I left fallow all season. That effort has involved removing one of the most prolific and stubborn weedy invaders on the farm, Mugwort. Mugwort seems to send out root runners to spread everywhere, and where I wasn't assiduous about pulling it early in the season, it is now often shoulder high, depending on the characteristics of the soil it's in. Sometimes it's easy to remove in a very satisfying way, as one good pull can bring up a whole clump with interconnected roots in one try. But sometimes it's quite tenacious. While I have it mostly under control in the vegetable garden, some areas, like the long enclosure where I had the portable pen for our Freedom Ranger chickens, are just too big and too thick with mugwort to make weeding practicable. I've taken to letting the sheep in there to graze on it, which they quite enjoy. Last week, while struggling with a particularly resistant mugwort clump, I found myself wondering whether there might be a commercial use for the weed, a way to turn a curse into a benefit. I had heard speak of its use as a medicinal herb, but I wondered whether one could just harvest massive quantities and process it into something. Yesterday, I found out. I was visiting my friend Anita in the Berkshires for an early dinner. I arrived before dark and had time to take a brief tour of her meticulously groomed and lovingly laid out vegetable garden, which has always impressed me. Anita was a longtime friend of my late partner Peter. He met her in the 1970s when he opened his weaving gallery in South Egremont, Massachusetts, across the street from a health food store, the first of its kind in the area, which had been established there by Anita. He became fast friends with her husband Bob, an architect and rug enthusiast. Indeed, the portico, screen porch, mudroom, and kitchen of my farmhouse are all the products of a design collaboration between Peter and Bob, who received rugs in exchange for his architectural services. With Peter and Bob both gone, it pleases me to have kept the connection with Anita. Anita has a prodigious knowledge of plants and their culinary uses. She's an inveterate forager who, as a girl, learned about the edible environment in the same town she lives in today from her grandmother. I've long wanted to do an interview with Anita for this bulletin, and she has always demurred. Rare is the time that I don't come away with some novel taste combination or valuable new knowledge from our visit. Last night, the novel taste combination was poached quince from her spectacular crop of big yellow quinces that put mine to shame, in yogurt but accented by a heavenly lavender syrup she had made. The valuable new knowledge was learning something about Moxibustion. As I viewed the garden, Anita pointed out a section of stone wall that she was having rebuilt, and another section where she had weeded everything out to make space for an extension of that wall. She said that what she pulled out was mugwort she had planted years ago. "You planted mugwort?" I asked, incredulously. I couldn't imagine why anyone would plant such an invasive pest. Anita explained that there were various uses for it, and then she mentioned this term I had never heard before, moxibustion. Very funny sounding word. But a little quick research revealed moxibustion is actually a word. It's a technique used in traditional Chinese medicine in which either cones of ground mugwort leaf, also called moxa leaf, are applied directly to particular points in the body, creating scarring because you're burning it, or the smoke from tightly tied sheaves of those dried leaves is brought close to those points with a variety of insulators, be it garlic or ginger or sometimes just air, providing different degrees of heat transfer. The contact points follow, as I understand it, the acupuncture pressure points. Mugwort, whether through moxibustion or otherwise, has apparently been used in traditional Chinese medicine for 2,500 years for hundreds of different ailments. The history and theory of its use are surveyed in a 2000 article, The Mechanism of Moxibustion, Ancient Theory and Modern Research, that I found available in the database of biotechnology information maintained by the National Institutes of Health in their project on evidence-based complementary and alternative medicine. The authors cite scientific studies showing demonstrated positive effects of moxibustion in treating such ailments as knee osteoarthritis or bradycardia as reasons that should prompt further study. So there I have it, a way to profit from an out-of-control weed, and thence to turn my dinky little farm into an economic powerhouse. I just have to chop off 2-foot sections of mugwort, create sheaves of stalks using cotton string, dry them out properly, and sell them on Etsy for $14 a bunch, which appears to be the going price. Moxibustion hasn't yet been tested on COVID-19, but hey, that didn't prevent hydroxychloroquine from getting a presidential endorsement. What have you got to lose? Speaking of which, I think the president might quite admire my resourcefulness in this. Smart businessmen prosper by capitalizing on underutilized resources. So dedicated is Mr. Trump to this approach, we learned in last week's second presidential debate, that he imported it into operating the government. The policy of separating children from their asylum-seeking parents, he seemed to suggest, was generated by the Obama administration because it constructed all those cages that were sitting there unused and practically crying out for occupants. There's, of course, a deep irony in Mr. Trump's explanation, given his embrace of the guns don't kill people, people kill people mantra of the NRA. I was tempted to shout out, cages don't separate families, hard-hearted presidents separate families. But I don't think he would have heard. I'm somewhat optimistic that in a matter of weeks I will no longer have to care how or what Mr. Trump thinks. Then I can get laser focused on promoting my Moxibustion business and brand.
Agriculture is underwritten by Turkana Farms, LLC, a small-scale producer of heritage-bred livestock and a wide array of vegetables and berries on just over 39 acres in Germantown, New York. More information, 518-537-3815.